If y'all have questions and you're ready to go, then I would like to give a brief introduction to Super Jamoose, who then will step in and provide a little bit more of an introduction, maybe a little bio, and is willing to share some links. Super Jamoose, come in. Are you there? Super Jamoose, can you read me?
Good evening. How is all? How is ya? How is all of you? How are all of you? I am Super Jamoose. Thank you, Maddie, for bringing me onto the show. Happy to be here tonight.
I am very happy to have you. And sorry, hang on. Okay, I think I had my microphone partially in the shot. Anyway, just professional things. I'm ecstatic that you were able to make some time to spend in our workshop tonight. This is the first time that we have worked together as co-DMs to explore ideas, and hopefully it won't be the last. I think this is going to be a ton of fun, and I look forward to hearing your own point of view on these things, how they intersect with your own experiences in D&D, because, hey, you could have 10 people in a room who've all played D&D, and they've all played different kinds of D&D with different circumstances, different stories and builds, and so it's really good to be able to stress test this Unearthed Arcana playtest material, especially something like this, where I think Wizards might be showing a little bit of ankle in terms of, well, something big might be coming down the pike.
Definitely have some thoughts about that. Well, maybe we'll leave that for later. I have some thoughts as to what form this is going to take, because this all smells of new book in 2020. Absolutely. Is what we're going to see. But as to what that is, whether we're going to see Player's Handbook 2, perhaps, or something a little bit different, maybe more the flavor of Xanathar's or what we saw with Mordenkainen. I have thoughts on that. We'll come back to it a little bit later on. But yeah, to your point as to having so many people in a room and everyone having different experiences and wanting to stress test, absolutely. That is something I have not yet been able to do, though players of my game, and I see Mitten Z is in the chat, and Mitten Z is one of my players, not to give too much away, but you might get a chance to use some of these things later. But we'll get to that.
Before we begin, speaking of, well, your table experience, and you have one of your players here, would you mind giving a little bit of a bio, like who is Super Jamoose? What do you do? Where might we find you? And prime us all into maybe the angle you're coming from with your experiences, and maybe what you're going to be bringing to this discussion.
Almost certainly. I'll do the best I can. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I don't want to bore you here before we get too far in. I am Super Jamoose. I have been DMing with D&D 5e for a little over 3 years now. Got back into the game back in 2016 because I was basically dared and smacked across the face and say, hey, you're pretty good at this. You should get back into it. You need a creative outlet. So I thought, well, I'll give Dungeons & Dragons another try. So I got into it. Started off with, it was right when Storm King's Thunder was released, which is one of the great tour de force modules of 5e. It's up there with Curse of Strahd. It's up there with Tomb of Annihilation. I would call my top 3. So stopped in a local comic shop and met up with some completely random strangers. We started playing, and that became a weekly deal. Fast forward 3 years later, this upcoming Sunday, I am running, according to my count, my 137th sequential episode with this same crew.
Wow, nice.
Now, we have run through, this is my 4th season of calling it. We've run through Storm King's Thunder, Tomb of Annihilation. We did Waterdeep Dragon Heist, not Mad Mage, Dragon Heist. And we're now running through the module inside of Acquisitions Incorporated.
Oh, okay.
Which is called the Orrery of the Wanderer, which is delightful. In terms of where you can find me, I am very active on Twitter. You can find me at @SJamoose. I'll type that into the chat here in just one moment. And we also do a little thing, Mitten Z and myself, we do a little side show called Backseat Gaming with Mittens over on the YouTube. It's just a little Let's Play channel, little casual stuff. Not necessarily recommended for children, but we have fun. We have fun. We've been doing, let me see. We found a modded copy of the very old game now, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, filtered through Google Translate. Because you might know that game was originally programmed in Japanese, and you need a localization team to translate from Japan to English. When you take Japanese text and you filter it raw through Google Translate, it doesn't always translate the way that it should. To very, very interesting effect and formatting. So that's what we're doing. We're also doing SteamWorld Heist, and we might be doing something kind of special for the holidays coming up soon. I think only Derek might know about that one. He knows a bit of the history behind the upcoming game we've got in the end of December, early January. So stay tuned to that if you're into something that's not necessarily D&D, but also rather fun. At least Mittensy and I are having a lot of fun making it. Check it out. I will type that into the chat shortly.
All right, so in brief, this ain't your first rodeo with D&D.
It ain't my first rodeo.
Very cool. All right, well then, I feel warmed up. I feel ready to go. I have a cat on the desk. I have some fine drink to help keep the vocal cords wiggling around as necessary.
Oh yeah.
And so I think it's time that we start crunching into the crunch. And I want to begin by saying, if any of you aren't familiar with Unearthed Arcana, they all begin with this box of text. This is playtest content. These are ideas that are thrown out for free that you can download. In fact, it just so happens that I have a link. There we go. I have a link to this site. If you want to follow along at home, you are welcome to go here, download it for free, consider it, and Wizards also solicits feedback on their Unearthed Arcana, which is...
There's a survey up. Sorry to interrupt you. There's a survey up for this exact class feature variant document. So if you've read it, you check it out, you've digested it, they want your feedback. They want this information from you so they can tweak and they can optimize, make it even better.
As this was the foundation of 5th edition, the Phoenix born out of the ashes of 4th. That said, I have plenty of good memories in 4th edition. I liked it, though I understand it, I might be in the minority in that. But ever since the rudimentary, concept of 5th edition was being put together, it was solicitation from the community, and Unearthed Arcana has continued that. And the things that we saw in original Unearthed Arcanas, they were tweaked, and they were bound into a book mostly called Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Which might mean, this is speculation, might mean we're going to get another, it's not a core rule book, but it's a rule book you probably want to have handy.
Yeah, definitely. They've said many times to say that Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which a lot of people treated as being Player's Handbook to / DM's Guide to, and it is and it isn't. So it's absolutely not necessary to enjoy the game to even have the game function, but it is certainly nice to have at the table. And perhaps we are going to see another one in the near future.
Yes, and I hope, Ivalon, that is the absolute correct face to use. I do not want to have Splatbook bloat. 5th edition, I think, has done very well to rein itself in from bloat, at least from official bloat. At the same time, DM's Guild is an amazing inspirational place where you can find whatever you want in 5th ed. Races, classes, adventures, whatever. Just a lot of content there. And so they're freeing that up for a lot of homebrew and for people to get in on the 5e train as well. But all right, let's start out with the concept to this isn't that we're necessarily going to see a second Barbarian, but these are options that are going to allow us to replace or enhance the normal features of your class. They would be, you can take this in Player's Handbook, or instead of this, you could take this other thing instead. And so it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. So Barbarians won't necessarily always be the same barbarian because you get the features, the class features that you do. You can kind of weave through a little bit more as you're going to be given an option at the levels that you would get these normal barbarian traits. Instead, you have the ability to choose with this playtest content. That's the caveat. That's the asterisk. With the playtest content, if it's allowed at your table, you can customize yourself without it doesn't damage the underlying. I want to be careful. There is a balance to the game, but I don't want it to sound like it's like mathematically to the 100th degree perfectly balanced with all the classes and such. But it gives you options that shouldn't necessarily upset what the class generally does, and it's niche. Would you agree with that? Do you have any more insight to add?
I would certainly agree with that. One thing you guys should definitely notice as we go through this is that for every single item, there is a key word that is used in every single item that's being used here. One of them is replaces, one of them is enhances. So replaces gives you the option to sort of specialize into one branch or the other. If you're familiar with other games such as World of Warcraft or the XCOM series, I use XCOM to say between the difference of making a sniper, for example, or a sharpshooter that focuses on bracing, like holding still and firing from a long distance, versus something that can run a snapshot, that can run very, very quickly and gain the second battle. That's your replacement. Versus enhancement, in which case you're taking something that already exists and you are adding more. But to your point, yeah, this is not intended to say you have to do it this way. Absolutely not. It's just more options that you can throw into the pot. More ingredients.
Well, we're going to begin. With barbarians, as so does the player's handbook here. The following variant is available to every class in the game. Oh, I'm sorry. There is a.
Oh yes, yep. We have to get into this too.
Yep, there is a universal. A universal one. So I guess I'm incorrect. I wanted to start with the letter B, but the letter A is in all classes. So I am the bad. Proficiency versatility as an option. And this is available to every class in this playtest supplement here. Whenever you gain the ability score improvement feature from your class, you can also replace one of your skill proficiencies with a skill proficiency offered by your class at first level. The proficiency you replace needn't. You know what? I don't see needn't used all that often. I get that's kind of fun. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a very rare word.
The proficiency you replace needn't be from the class. This change represents one of your skills atrophying as you focus on a different skill. So when you get your ASI, and hey, for rogues and fighters, you would get a little bit more shuffling around, I suppose, because you get a couple little bonus ASIs mixed in. You could swap out a skill proficiency. What are your thoughts on this?
I already had a question fielded by one of my players earlier.
Okay.
It's actually in the very first sentence. It says, whenever you gain the ability score improvement, you can also. The keyword here, that little critical modifier there is also. Mm-hmm. This is something you can do in addition to your increase of ability, like say +2 to dexterity versus +1 to wisdom and charisma, or scrapping that and taking a feat. This is something you could also do. I just think this is a great idea in that if you find that, I've got proficiency in animal handling, it's like, that's not really doing my whole lot. So I'm going to scrap that, go back to my original list and say the Barbarian. And let me see. Barbarian, skills you have, animal handling, of course, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, survival. Maybe I want intimidation instead. So it's versatility, it's quality of life. Yeah, I think they should have something like this for sure.
In the games that I run, not just in 5th ed, but even going back, I would, as a homebrew rule, allow for characters to go through kind of a metamorphosis like this, where if they want to retrain a skill or even get proficiency in a skill that they've been focusing on since we've played, because it does represent being, stronger, wiser, maybe, from the outset, your character was really good at proficiency, but you never really ever became the spotter in the group or something along those lines. And instead, throughout the 7 levels that you've been going through so far, you've really been delving into the arcane. And so as a house rule, personally, this is an anecdote from my tabletop, a house rule, I would allow for some skill growth like this. So to me, seeing a proficiency versatility, I have no problem with it, as I allow for this to happen anyway. Though, because it's a personal decision, a house rule, it's more meaningful or focused on what has happened in the story so far, what has the character done. This is a general allowance, which I don't think cheapens the experience, because the player's going to choose something that is going to be good for their character anyway. Do you have a house rule similar to this? Have you experienced skill growth, or have you allowed for skill changes anyway, even though it wasn't in the player's handbook?
Oh, definitely. We've been able to splice in homebrew here and there, although it wasn't as gradual or minor as this. If anything, I've had a couple of instances where we had what we called a soft reroll, in that I would be able to take multiple things and mix them out, and maybe that would be skill changes. Or we had one situation where our warlock got himself eaten by a mind flayer. Classic death. And without missing a beat, the druidess walks up and casts Reincarnate on him.
Okay.
And we went to the table and we rolled up a random new race for that to happen. Details. But I took an opportunity to say, right, your body is actually changing. You are going to change. Your mind might change. Your brain's going to change because the last one was eaten. So we're going to allow you to change things. Like I say, a soft reroll. But this, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you mentioned homebrew, but now a very, very common homebrew accommodation is now potentially becoming something part of the base game. And yeah, that I think this is a solid acknowledgement to say, a lot of our players really like to do that. Let's just make it part of the rules.
Yep.
Let's allow that to be a thing.
And there is another part here about maneuvers from the Battle Master, which is a subclass to the fighter. If you know any maneuvers from the fighter's Battle Master archetype, you have access to options in the fighter section of this document. See maneuver versatility and maneuver options. So it is warning us that there is this extra consideration, and that's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it.
I'm seeing something in chat here that say from Palladian, who says that one-shot focus group in allows this for free until level 4 anyway. Adventurers League does that too, where up until, I believe, 4th or 5th level, you can completely wipe your character out and begin again, like Fallout style. So, yeah, this is something they've already accommodated in certain ways. So this is just, this was slated to happen, I think.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone go, oh, this is, well, all right. I'm sorry, Derek. Derek here is, no, you decided it. You must be locked in and suffer in silence.
You take animal handling, you sleep with it.
That's
what's gonna happen.
That's right. This is D&D. This is punishing. This is where your friends and family should make fun of you for all of your failures, including, when a piece of plastic doesn't end on the right number that you want it to. This is about, anyone can make friends. Not everyone can break friends. And
that's how we roll.
Some talk about bags of holding. You had a ranger with a druid mother who taught him how to use the Staff of Thorns, so blended the ranger with druid abilities. And you know what? So Cromdrade, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah,
all right,
your time will come.
Yes,
don't worry about that.
Now we're gonna explore the barbarian here. A barbarian has access to the following features: survival instincts, and I'm going to go over, if any of you are playing along at home, get your player's handbooks out and follow along, as I'll have it open and I'll reference it, but I primarily want to have this zoomed in to make it more readable here for you all. And the cat is following the mouse. If I position it correctly, it'll make it look like she's staring into your soul.
She's being very helpful.
Yeah. You become proficient in your choice of 2 of the following skills: animal handling, medicine, nature, perception, or survival. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses either of those skills. And so that would come in, and we have danger sense at 2nd level and reckless attack. And this one is saying that this would replace danger sense. So what? Do you want me to address you as Jamoose, or do you want me to say Super Jamoose or SJ?
Jamoose is perfectly, nope, Jamoose is perfectly fine.
Jamoose. All right. If we're building a classic barbarian, it has danger sense. Why, or what would be the appeal to take survival instincts instead if we choose that?
Well, I mean, this what I'm definitely seeing a lot of is that the classes that are being built now are not all about combat and magic and healing. It is also skills. It's also social skills. It's also that kind of intangible technical kind of edge. So I just think that allows that barbarian to kind of break the mold out of the I am tough and I punch things until there's no longer a problem mold, if you will. I just think this is a wonderful option, actually, for a couple of reasons. And feel free to chime in, but one thing I have noticed is that a lot of people don't understand danger sense. And even on the other side of the table, behind the DM screen, it's kind of weird cases as to, well, it applies to danger sense, or no, it does, and yes, it doesn't, no, it does, and yes, it doesn't. So you could say, nuts to all that, I'm going to take survival instincts, and I'm going to be a battle medic, using medicine and survival. Now you become the scout that your party badly, badly needs. So, again, more options. And perhaps it gets people away from something that they maybe don't understand to maybe something that they want to have.
Yep, you hit the switch and you go from, roar, I'm Kronk the Barbarian, who's really good at hitting things and really good at not staying down. And it does make you, I saw it was, Mittens, or Mitten-Z, says it makes the Barbarian a little bit more well-rounded. And in this case, yeah, because you get some skill proficiencies, but Barbarian is presented. It's not that it's bad that it's presented as the rugged survivalist that deals out damage and takes it in spades, because there are absolutely roles in a party for someone like that. If you want to play a Barbarian that isn't all about that, you can still have Slab Bulkhead as your Barbarian, but you give him survival instincts instead, and instead of just the danger sense, the dodginess, you're more engaged with the world instead of, I guess, pitted against it.
My only complaints about this new option for survival instincts is comparing the list of things you can choose. You can choose animal handling, medicine, nature, perception, or survival, versus the base skills you can pick up as a barbarian, which says animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival. My only gripe is that I would think survival instincts could also have athletics and intimidation as ones you can choose to double up. I find it a little bit odd as to why there's kind of a discrepancy there. Like adding
an expertise, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. That's what this is. Really, it's expertise. Having the option to suddenly get medicine is great. Don't get me wrong. But then, what if I want that for athletics? What if I want that for intimidation? As survival instincts, I mean, being intimidating to survive, yeah, I'd buy that.
I would agree with that caveat as something that you could reply back if you take this survey and say, I don't see why you couldn't double that up. If you get something, not just the bard and the rogue that have expertise. I believe it's the knowledge cleric that allows you, it's not called expertise, but it's expertise in everything but its name, where it allows you to take double proficiency instead. And I think that would be something that would be really interesting as another option.
That's blessings of knowledge. That's first level for cleric.
Yes. And that's something also that is brought up in the workshop. Sometimes when we create a character that has elves racially get perception proficiency. And if you are an elven sailor, sailors also get perception as a proficiency from their background. And whenever in our character creation workshop, we come to this point where there's this... What is my cat doing? Sorry. where they double up. I take a moment and I prompt anyone who is in a situation like this, talk to your dungeon master and ask, can I actually get double proficiency then because I have this situation? Or can I move it to a different skill? Or is this going to be a case where your DM's just going to be, kind of a hard ass about it and say, nope, sorry, the slot's already filled, but I'm not going to let you fill something else. I don't know why a DM would do that. Hey, you know what? There's all kinds of games and all kinds of DMs out there. But this would be that instance where absolutely, Jamoose, where if you would get it again, where you could just double up on it. Anything else then for survival instincts, or shall we continue?
I think we'll continue on. Like I say, the only gripe is that just expand that list just a little and we'll be there. That's a great option.
Yeah, and, giving expertise on athletics to a barbarian is, I don't know if that's really going to break anything because the barbarian's arguably already going to be really good at it anyway. Anyway, let's move on to instinctive pounce.
Let's continue on.
Yes.
Which is a great name, by the way.
This is a 5th level barbarian feature that is proposed to replace fast movement. So if you don't want the 10-foot burst of speed, instead at 5th level, when a creature ends its turn within 15 feet of you, you can use your reaction to move up to half your speed to a space closer to the creature. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. And I zoomed out a little bit. I want to make sure that there's not a... Okay, nope. So this is the last suggested alternative or a variant you can take. So if you don't want just a universal 10 feet of movement, you can instead... it's a move. It says pounce. I love the imagery. You can use your reaction to move up to half your speed to a space closer to the creature. Which means you don't have to initiate melee contact. It just means that you're getting a little bit extra charging in. What are your thoughts on this?
Maddie's telling me you gotta seal the doors. What's going on?
We have been raided by Coffee Cat Presents. And hello, Coffee and Raiders. Coffee, I hope you put in some good work on your comic. Welcome and thank you for stopping in as we're going over these variant class features.
My thoughts on this one. Again, this comes down to a question of what do you want to focus on. This is a good question when it comes down to your mechanics and your movement. You're going to either get fast movement, which is just a base plus 10 feet. I mean, that's great. That works all the time. It works when you're asleep. It works when you're awake. If you're bad or good, be good for goodness sake. That sort of thing. Now, Instinctive Pounce, it is a triggered ability. So it's specific, though. When a creature ends its turn within 15 feet of you, you can use a reaction to move up to half your speed, which presumably the average would be about 15 feet.
Yep.
So it kind of works out that if they're within 15 feet, you can close the distance. You can just get right up in their grill. It doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. Someone made a point, I just saw it, Masha Strike mentioned to say it's like the monstrous orc racial abilities. Yeah, it's a lot like aggressive.
Yep.
Although, unlike the racial ability for that monstrous orc, this is just a reaction that you can use. If I'm not mistaken, aggressive is used at the end of their turn. It's kind of like their cunning action.
What to you would how do I want to phrase this? Why would you want to pounce? Why would you want a pouncing barbarian instead of one that has a general, just your leg muscles are that much more developed and you get this static 10 feet? Why would you want to pounce?
Well, let's be honest here. When's the last time you saw a barbarian that used ranged attacks as their primary focus?
Not too often.
Not too often. I've never heard of one that focuses on javelins and longbows. Although if it's out there, someone can definitely prove me wrong, and I'll shut my face. So you want to be in the thick of things. You want to be in it. This to me feels like a case of I've just finished off a guy and I'm standing over his smoldering corpse, and suddenly you do the solid snake thing, goes off in your head, you turn around, there's another guy. I'm going to get up in the grill of the other guy, and I'm going to cause problems. I'm going to ruin the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it is all about keeping the distance between you and the enemies minimal. That's what this is. So to me, this is all about tactics. This is not necessarily flavor. The flavor is pretty self-explanatory. Instinctive pounce. This is mechanics to me.
It is the sacrifice for a greater conditional, although as a barbarian, you're probably going to find yourself in more conditions, which you can use instinctive pounce, than a general 10 feet. I would also say that there's a trade-off where the 10 feet is general movement, which could impact your climbing, your swimming, and there's even some abilities that might just add on to your movement speed with a flying ability as well. Where instinctive pounce does not increase how fast you can swim or how far you can climb. And maybe I'm being too much of a stickler, but with it says pounce, it's implying a jump, but this isn't necessarily going to be sort of a free flight. If it's a flying enemy, it's not going to allow you to, unless you interpret it rules as written, that you are moving, which jumping could be a move, perhaps. Again, how do we want to argue this? Would it put you, in a freeze frame after a jump? Would this movement be free movement, 15 feet of movement through water and other hazards? Could you, if you're on a ledge, or I don't know, if you're sort of on a valley and there's a road going parallel and you sense, hey, we're going to get ambushed and there's an enemy that moves in, would that movement allow you to make a 15-foot jump up to that other path?
Well, I think it's subject to the part of the sentence where it says half your speed. Your speed. So your speed is affected by things such as difficult terrain.
Mm-hmm.
It could also be affected by things, are you immersed in water? Is your target 10 feet up a cliff? So I would rule that, yeah, you get to move half your speed, but then it's subject to difficult terrain. Are you slowed down? Are you hampered in any sort of way? A question I see here from Cromdrad. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It would only
Cromdrade.
Comdrade. I'm sorry. It would only apply to combat, correct? Well, it says it's using a reaction, so I would imagine that, 9 times out of 10, it's going to refer to a combat situation. But earlier to that, when you mentioned to say maybe you see an ambush, would you kind of react and see that? Yeah, I would kind of rule it. I would say that you maybe get a bit of a head start rushing into combat.
Ivlon is indicating that it is a free disengage. And that's probably because the definition here is when a creature ends its turn, which creature is also an ally to you.
Sort of like a disengage in that you're able to kind of weave without invoking attack of opportunity attacks, although at only half speed. Now, I know that we weren't going to talk a whole heck of a lot about Xanathar, but I am going to bring up something very, very, very quickly.
Sure, yeah, we can touch on it.
Yeah, I just got to find it here. Oh, shoot, where is it? Oh, maybe we got to come back to me here. I thought there was a barbarian that allowed you to fly, and I'm pretty sure that was Storm Heralds. Correct me if I'm wrong here, chat.
I wish that I could. I'm not very well versed in a lot of just because there's a lot of subclasses. I haven't gone through and read all the splat subclasses, so I'm afraid I'm not going to be too useful to that in that regard.
Okay, well, I could be incorrect on that one, but someone did mention to say, what if you were flying? Well, yeah, if you somehow had a flying speed baked into your character, then now move up to half your speed. Well, for that matter, if you had boots of flying, the winged boots of flying, that would increase your flying speed, would it not?
Or if you have an Aarakocra Barbarian.
Aarakocra Barbarian. There, that's even better. That's even better. So now if you have a flying speed now you're able to move at half your speed. It does not say walking speed. It does not say swimming speed. It just says speed. So I could argue that, okay, let's say I have a 30 feet of flying. It's like, I'm going to fly 15 feet as this instinctive pounce. Barbarian.
Yes, a Barbarian.
They agrees with me. Yes.
So
you just bird person this guy, you know?
I love the imagery. I think that this is a I can see where it would be a trade-off for conditional bursts of speed as opposed to just a general the 10 feet, which I think some people splash Barbarian. This is something to consider as well. We don't have to run everything through a multi-class test with every other class, but I think there are people who splash Barbarian enough to also get that 10 feet of movement. This might make Barbarians even more versatile for multi-classing. And, is it broken? You have a very dodgy Barbarian. The enemies are probably still either going to shoot at him from, 15 feet away if it's half the movement generally.
Right.
Or be able to move up on him. So, yeah, it's a disengage. I overall like the concept. I think some of the wording and the rules, which I don't want to spend an hour on this and reading into the minutia of everything. It might need to be a little bit more clarified. To give an example, kind of like what we're talking about with the Barbarian or just the ping-ponging Barbarian that was brought up in chat. But I like it, and I think it would be a viable replacement, if not just to provide a little bit more clarity.
For sure. For reference, it was actually the Storm Herald, level 6, the Storm Soul C. You gain resistance to lightning damage, and you can breathe underwater. You gain a swimming, not flying, speed of 30 feet. That's what I was thinking. Now, granted, in my own experience, I have run very little combat underwater, but I mean, if you're running a kind of a coastal campaign, or you're bumming around with the Storm Giants in Maelstrom, that could be your jam.
Mobile Barbarians, especially in combat, I just love that, just jumping around. I was talking about in Diablo 2, you make a jumping Barbarian, a bunch of smash attacks. I saw someone was talking about a Barbarian, like jumping even like downhill. Just imagine a big axe and you just come down, or a maul, and you smash on an enemy, or, well, hopefully an enemy.
Well, a frenemy to you, perhaps.
Yes.
The poor fella's probably thinking, like, that guy's not going to hit me. Jeez, no. And it's all too late. It just goes dark.
And I might be able to think of some role play as well that you can move in here, having kind of a twitchy Barbarian who's jumpy at things. Because again, it's loosely worded, because as long as a creature ends within 15 feet of you, which could be an ally, could that be an extra little boost to get over a cliff, or something to work into the role play. But unless you have anything else, Jamoose, why don't we go into the Bard?
Definitely. Yeah, I think I was going to tack on that one last thing to say.
Sure.
When a creature ends its turn within 15 feet of you, it does not indicate... I didn't realize that. It did not indicate enemy. So yeah, a friend, an ally, could end its turn within it, and now you can jump to that person. Yeah, wow, that's definitely... I got to see that again.
Yeah, your party members...
Your party members could also help trigger that. You can keep chain reactioning the way through. Dang, that's really good.
Yep. And also to imagine a germaphobe Barbarian that doesn't want to touch anyone and just jumps away from anyone who gets too close. You don't need armor, so you could have tissue boxes on your feet. You can wear protective gloves, and...
The wild hypochondriac.
Yeah.
But let's move on to Bard.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so a Bard has access to the following features. First level Bard feature. The following spells expand the Bard spell list, and this list is including Xanathar's guide.
Yeah.
So we have a splat, in a sense. It's a non-core. That might be splat. We have a splat playtest that is referring to another splat book, which, do we all accept Xanathar's is pretty much on par with the PHB? Some people might say it's more powerful, but it is interesting that they are referencing those splat spells into another document here. And there's a whole list of other spells that are added. I don't think we need to go over every one, but if there's a couple that to you stand out, if you say yes, this is needed, or okay, I guess. Do you have any thoughts regarding the spells that have been made available in this playtest material to bards?
Again, I think this comes down to a question of quality of life and maybe a bit of homebrewing. I know I've heard cases of DMs allowing, say, well, I'll allow my bard to have command because they really, really wanted it as just part of their kit. So that makes sense to me. The only other thing I have on that is that Mittenzy has commented, yeah, why don't bards have access to haste? That just makes me the saddest of pandas. They don't have haste.
Well, I will counter and say bards have access to every spell in the game.
Just about,
if
right?
you think about it, with their secret lores.
Not true. Yeah. So you can get it in another way. It's just, if you're going to go so far in increasing the core, why not just go the extra step? I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that one.
Mass healing words nice to have, says Palladion. Yeah, there are folks who say that they're going to play a bard and they're the healer. And in 5th edition, this is something that I like. A healer, geez, a lot of classes have healing. It's not always just the cleric anymore. So to expand on this, maybe without needing to use up your magical secrets. Well, I don't know what else you'd take, but that is super dependent on the campaign you're playing in. So I wonder if this wasn't a list of spells that, through anecdotal evidence or a survey, that the developers here, the playtest content, didn't see that many bards were taking this stuff already with their magical secrets. And so to allow for a little bit more branching out into cleric-y bards or druid-y bards, they didn't just enhance the core with these spells that might have been commonly taken otherwise.
Well, US mentioned too, what's the term you're using for the alternate spell book? The splat book? Is that what you called it?
A splat book, yeah.
Splat book, yeah. I see a lot of Xanathar stuff that's being pulled in here, so I think that's another way of trying to weave and marry the player's handbook with the expansion pack, effectively, that is Xanathar. So, yeah, there could be another platform for that, too. But other than that, again, quality of life, homebrew, I do agree that maybe it's part of the surveys. More fun, more options.
Ivalon said spells are spells, and ultimately, if I have a player in my game that really wants a spell that's outside their spell list, and they've earned it, they're working towards it, their character's going, I'm probably going to allow for it anyway to be on their list without having to bend over backwards. And so, seeing this, I guess in an official sense, it's good. Bard's going to have a spell list that's, it's a lot of conditional things, which is neat. But then how often do these niche things happen? But at the end of the day, I do agree that spells are spells. And when you have a class that's kind of like a wizard, a fixed spell list wizard, that can cast even better, because you can use druid spells and cleric spells. A spell's a spell. This doesn't ruffle my feathers. I'm not going to lose sleep at night knowing that the bards have an expanded spell list when they technically already do. Especially if you go lore bard and you get more magical secrets. So I'm absolutely fine with this. Are you good with this concept and some of the things that they're proposing for the spells?
Definitely good with this. I am much more impressed with the next item, which is magical inspiration.
Yes. A first level bard feature that enhances bardic inspiration. And so this isn't a choice like the barbarian stuff. If a creature has a bardic inspiration die from you and casts a spell, the creature can roll that die and add the number rolled to 1 damage or healing roll of the spell. The bardic inspiration die is then lost. And if we go to bardic inspiration, now this is not. I don't know if Bardic Inspiration received sort of they have errata that's came out especially for the gift set that came out last year, where a lot of things were kind of like fine-tuned, like frequently asked questions. But as it was, as it's generally written here, you can inspire others through stirring words or music. To do so, use a bonus action on your turn to choose one creature other than yourself within 60 feet of you who can hear you. That creature gains 1 Bardic Inspiration die, a d6. Once within the next 10 minutes, the creature can roll the die and add the number rolled to one ability check, attack roll, or saving throw it makes. The creature can wait until after it rolls the d20 before deciding to use the Bardic Inspiration die, but must decide before the DM says whether the roll succeeds or fails. Once the Bardic Inspiration die is rolled, it is lost. So here we have our list: ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, and this is tacking on that if you cast a spell, the creature can roll the die and add the number rolled to 1 damage or healing roll as well. So it's just giving a little bit more, D6, an extra D6 on a fireball, or an extra D6 to a curative spell.
See a question in chat here with the whole where did it go? Evelon said that I like it in concept, but having magical inspiration College of Valor makes it weird. That crossover College of Valor. Actually, I disagree, because what we're taking is that core 3, which is attack, skill, saving throw. We're tacking on 2 more, which is damage of a spell or healing of a spell. Valor is combat inspiration that says you are adding a number roll to a weapon damage roll. Note, I'm talking about weapon damage, not a spell. And also there's that one for AC. So actually, it doesn't cross over. You're just making that array that you can apply this to even bigger. So a Valor Bard with magical inspiration, you can basically inspire just about anything.
And hey, if you're a Valor Bard on the front line, you're seeing magic spells cast at you. So why not also include it onto spells?
Yep. So
I
think it's this quality of life. It's a nice expansion. Yeah, I don't see why not.
And Evelon, and for anyone else out there, if you bring up an issue or if you have a question, heck, I've been playing and running D&D for a long time. I forget things. I mix stuff up. And a lot of times I have to go back and reference and read, just like Jamoose did in this case, to find clarity. So, if any of you have those questions or a qualm, an issue that is brought up with what we're going over, bring it up, because we'll read it and we'll address it together. This is a good forum just for that. Let's see. Palladion says this one might be a bit too strong later on. Well, it does grow. Raz was talking about it does, and so it becomes a D12 at 15th level. Would, getting, I guess, an extra D12 on a healing word, is that powerful when you're tickling epic level? Maybe? I don't know. You'd have a ton of hit points, and you're already going to be conscious anyway with a healing word. So the D12 can still give you 1 extra hit point. On average, it'll give you 6. And, or an extra 6 damage at level 15. It is eating into a resource. You only have so many Bardic Inspirations. Now you get them back on a short rest. But it would increase the tempo of combat. It would a little bit more, but you already have so many expansive uses of Bardic Inspiration, vanilla as per Bard, let alone through all the subclasses, that most of the subclasses have their own little twist, such as cutting words, or what was the Valor's one called?
That's combat inspiration.
Combat inspiration, yeah. I do not have like a DPR calculator open. I don't know. My gut instinct is that I don't know if this would really break a combat. It does make bards even more universally applicable. But at that point, is it really... They're so universally applicable anyway. Is it just... Sure. It's not really making it more special or eating into the niche of something else. You have a Healy Cleric. that gets bonuses to stuff like that, and that's a specific cleric build. But I don't know if this is really stepping on wizards' toes or sorcerers' toes or things like that. It could make cantrips more powerful, per bardic inspiration. If you want to blow those in a combat, I mean, as your DM, please exhaust your resources. I can always make more monsters. You can't make more bardic inspirations.
That much is true. That's for sure.
I say that not to provide combative. I don't want to teach DMs that it's DM versus PC here, but
No.
All right, so I like magical inspiration. I think it's fine to add on. It complements, as you said, if we're sticking with the core PHB, and we might be able to find, if we look at all of the other, even the official printed stuff, it might have a weird little quirk. I don't know, like College of Whispers maybe has it would be really interesting in a College of Whispers build. I'm just bringing up a college, but or what's the one where you're like a big old diva bard? It's
that's College of Glamour.
Glamour, yeah.
You're effectively the Freddie Mercury of bards.
Yeah. It's
Hey.
So I don't know. You could find probably a fun little quirk with however any of those interact with the bardic inspiration, but I don't think it's like too powerful.
No, I agree. I think this could stay. I think that just gives it even more options. Mittens has got the idea here to say that the whole point of the bard is to make your allies even better. So it's just on brand. It's just
that is your niche. Yeah.
Yep, that's your thing.
All right. Next up, first level bard feature, which enhances spellcasting. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace one spell you learned from this spellcasting feature with another spell from the bard's spell list. The new spell must be the same level as the spell you replace. And as a rule tip, cantrips, level 0 spells, are spells, which means that you can swap out a cantrip on a long rest. Thoughts?
This is not the first class that comes across this, but I think that this has to be all the feedback coming into WotC, is saying that we need a way to be able to trade out spells on the fly. I'm on an Arctic campaign. I'm going to the Eye of the Allfather. It's going to take me 20 damn days to get there, and I'm stuck with sleep, and nothing here sleeps because it's all undead. I need to switch it out for something like that. So yeah, this is quality of life, in that you're allowed to trade off very small amounts every time you finish a long rest. This is fine. I think this is just a good way to be able to be versatile. You don't feel punished for having that one spell that you thought would be cool in a very narrow situation, and I was like, wow, this is useless. I feel like I'll never get to use this. But with spell versatility, I can switch it out.
Yeah. This is something I allow for. Derek's in my Tuesday campaign, and as far as at least people that I've met through Twitch and I've interacted in a D&D context, he and I don't know if any of my other, if Coffee's still around, that can attest that I gave them, and it's not the first time I've done it, I gave them as players a chance to, readjust their spell lists, to fidget with stuff, which could be even, replace a cantrip or something like that you're not finding a lot of use, or you want to, I don't know, you just grown, you're not a firebug anymore, so you get rid of, the fire one. Jeez. I was going to say Burning Hands, but that's a level 1. But yeah, so this is something I do anyway. And so, Ivlon, you're saying that cantrip swapping feels a little odd. Maybe because they're supposed to be inbuilt. If you do it as a special thing that goes outside the rules, then, it's promoting the context of the story. Have the players, the players have, earned the swap out, because they're going to get things that are more in tune with the campaign because they've been paying attention. And this is like, well, anyone can do it, and now it's a little random. At the same time, you're changing out one spell per long rest. I don't know if it's I don't think it's super broken. This is something that I think a lot of people have allowed, and it's a homebrew rule that has been given a little bit of an official varnish and offered here.
Yeah, definitely. Shadamura is asking its burning, desiring question: does that rule tip apply to every caster that gains a spell versatility? Bards are not the only one who gain this,
That is
but
true.
every single class that gets spell versatility, it functions in the same way.
Yes.
Rangers, for example, would get this same feature. To your point earlier to say switching out cantrips, no, I definitely think we need that. I've suffered before in other campaigns where I pick my cantrips and then you remember, oh yeah, cantrips are baked in. You can't really swap those out. And yeah, you're right. These are supposed to be the spells you're effectively born with. You have
Right.
it. It's like the freckles on your body. You just kind of have them. But here, I can switch that mole from my left shoulder to my right shoulder with impunity. I can execute that. So nah, I think that's just something that should exist. This is a good feature. Quality of life.
And ta-da! That's the bard.
That's the bard.
Da-da-da-da. Short and sweet like a honey dip dwarf. I like it. I don't think it makes bards a little bit more bardy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's time to move on to cleric, I suppose.
Look at the clerics, yo.
A cleric has access to the following features: cantrip versatility.
Yeah, here we go.
Now this is spell versatility for bards. Clerics have cantrip versatility. Whenever you gain a level in this class, you can replace one cantrip you learned from this spellcasting feature with another cantrip from the cleric spell list. I didn't have a problem with the bard doing it. I don't have a problem with the cleric doing it. Are we agreed?
I agree. The only real difference here being is that it depends upon how the class learns a spell. For example, the bard learns spells every single level as they go. A cleric has the whole book in their pocket, and it becomes a question of what did they prepare for each day. But this is where I ran into that problem when I was playing a war cleric, is that my cantrips were locked. But now every time I gain a level, I can swap it out for something that I feel is more appropriate, or maybe there's a story reason. Maybe I dropped a certain cantrip and I learned something else. Again, quality of life, it's a good thing to have.
Machishika asks, would this also expand to the wizard borrowed ones from specific clerics? Well, this is saying from the cleric spell list, and so I guess if you have a subclass that is allowing you to take other classes' spells, but provides the caveat that they count as cleric spells for you, then I would presume as much, because they're being cast as a cleric spell, even though it's not found on the cleric spell list.
Yeah, technically speaking, whenever you learn a spell from another class, it becomes a cleric spell for you. But say, for example, domain spells. Now, domain spells are things you learn at 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. There's no cantrips in a domain spell list.
Yes.
So that's kind of unaffected.
I'm checking out chat here real quick to make sure I didn't miss any.
For sure.
Derek asks, do you feel going too far into this quality of life track starts to make you lose flavor, as all you're doing is adding flexibility to the point where the class... Oh, right, so, there's... it's sort of like a bowling alley, right? You have 12 different lanes, and there are the 12 classes, 13 now if you allow Artificer from Eberron. And, is it still the same game, or is it like are you still playing a bard if you're allowing your bard to bowl, but your bard can launch the bowling ball down the start of its own down the start of its own lane, but end up trying to hit a strike 5 lanes down after kind of bumping over the gutters or something? Is that still a bard, or is the flexibility kind of maybe making the classes more samey and less kind of crunchy? Like, yeah, I want to play a wizard because wizards are blah, because bards are blah, instead of I want to play D&D and I don't know, a cleric, but it's a cleric that's a bard, but I get some sorcerer stuff, things like that.
It does start to blur the lines a little bit, and it's a bit of an argument for sure that maybe if you're getting almost too jack of all trades, you will become a master of nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a good point to remember, Although I would argue that in practice, someone who wants to play a wizard is going to gear themselves to being a wizard. So I suppose your experience may vary, is all I have to say about that one.
And I would also say, whatever iteration of this becomes printed, if you as the dungeon master don't want these as options, don't allow them.
Yeah,
I mean, heck, even feats are printed in the player's handbook, and the player's handbook says even feats are optional. So you might have players who want. I mean, heck, when we started the Tuesday game, I told my players we're going player's handbook only, or with Lethality Complexes playing Celine the Death Cleric out of the Dungeon Master's Guide. It was core rulebook only. I didn't allow even Xanathar's stuff, and it's not like Xanathar's just was hot off the presses at that point either. So it's, if you don't like it, don't allow it in its entirety, or just, say, sure, I'm fine with everything, but you know what? Keep your spells, because in this world, I want to flavor it that you're born with that freckle. I love that analogy, Jamoose. You were born with that freckle, and you know what? Roll with it. And even though I understand I'm locking you into your cantrips, I understand I'm locking you into your cantrips, so use them in cool ways. Because it's an extension of you, and I want you to lean into that as a part of the world that I'm running for you. Oh no, communication at the table and negotiation?
Oh gosh, no. Heavens, no. Let's continue on.
Yes.
Let's go to Cleric spells. It's the same thing as a Bard spells. Just spells are
yeah,
spells.
Spells are spells.
Great.
You did see Branding Smite, because clerics do hit stuff, at least on occasion. So that's interesting to get a smite spell as a cleric spell.
Look at all these auras, too. Third level, fourth level, vitality, life, purity. I like that. That's cool.
It is getting a little paladin-y, with the auras and the smite. Is it replacing a paladin, though?
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. It synergizes. Okay, I'm referring to another Unearthed Arcana, which I think you've already touched upon in another stream. The Twilight Cleric, which is the new cleric that's rolled out, which is all about auras to begin with. I think that just sort of connects, right? So I think that's kind of inspired by, do clerics have auras? Because Twilight, because it's basically the sentinel holding the lantern in amongst all the darkness. That's what Twilight clerics are. This just works with it. So again, spells are spells. It's nice to have.
Yeah. Yep. I like it. I think it's fine. Expanded spell list is not gonna break clerics.
Yep.
Because they don't even have to take the spells even if you allow them. So yeah, I'm good with these. They all seem cleric-y. They all seem to fill the role, as clerics are kind of support. They're just they can do a lot of things. If you want a front line, you can build towards that. You can build a stay back and support. You can, and this just further allows for that. Now,
I was surprised to see that they didn't, as part of their core, they did not have access to power word heal. I kind of blindly assumed they did. But apparently they didn't. So okay, great. They can do that now.
Well, they just had to teach. They just had to teach in seminary school. You got to hit that power chord when you're singing the praises. It's that moment in Tenacious D when they just go oh, and the demon, just sort of is being flashed back when they hit that strong note. And so you just had to learn it.
We are but men. Rock. Anyways, harness divine power.
Yes, channel divinity. This enhances channel divinity.
Yes.
Oh, actually, I got to catch up to cleric here. Divine domain. All right, here's our Chan div here. You can expend a use of your channel divinity to fuel your spells. As a bonus action, you touch your holy symbol, utter a prayer, and regain 1 expended first level spell slot. Another option for using your channel divinity if you don't turn undead, or do a custom domain-centric channel divinity.
Yeah, this isn't bad. This allows you, it speaks to me of sorcerers, and that I think, I'm not using this This is a channel divinity can be fantastic. I mean, you're in a room of undead. There's nothing better than having a cleric inside that room with you. So they can just, fear undead. Great. If you think that I'm not really going to use that, I want to siphon it, and I want to cast, first level cure wounds, for example, in a pinch. So, yep, I think that's okay. My only gripe, and then I start to think further on into higher and higher levels. When I think, okay, now I'm a 20th level cleric, I have my leaky behind me, and I need to sacrifice channel divinity for a first level spell slot. Like, that's it? At 20th level. I don't know. I think I'm thinking getting into the rules of good and bad balance here. That should maybe, that's what I'm looking for. It should have like a bit of exponential growth as you get higher as a cleric. Maybe it should sacrifice channel divinity for maybe a 5th when you get to a higher tier. My only 2 cents on that one.
Or number of uses, because of course the number of times you can channel divinity can also go up. I can see we're at a higher level. I mean, a first level, again, in a pinch, you got to bring someone back up, reset their death saving throws with a curative spell, or I don't know, you got to get in that one last, blessed weapon or something like that.
Cleric spell, blessed weapon, sure.
It's, it's in a pinch. Definitely, this is more front-loaded at lower levels. I think this is a great option, especially because you're not always surrounded by undead, which means that you may not also always have the niche circumstances your other half or sometimes third, depending on your domain, because sometimes you'll get 2 channel divinities options with a domain. So a half or a third or even all of your channel divinities might not be as applicable as turning undead or some other things, and so it gives you a resource that you can tap into for other circumstances, including roleplay. Roleplay or even downtime to a degree, depending on the spell that you cast. Could play into helping to forge something, could play into enhancing an ability to better interact with someone. So you can use it in combat, but this also allows for channel divinity to allow for enhanced downtimes and social encounters too.
For sure. Like I said, my only gripe is that maybe reconsider balance. Otherwise, in and of itself, I mean, the keyword this entire night, this entire keyword is versatility.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that just speaks to it.
Next up, we have Blessed Strikes.
Yeah.
8th level Divine Domain feature. This replaces Divine Strike or Potent Spell Casting, which is important because not all clerics are alike. You have casty clerics and you have bonky clerics. And casty clerics got Potent Spell Casting, and bonky clerics got Divine Strike. Blessed Strikes, well, in battle you are blessed with Divine Might. When a creature takes damage from one of your spells or weapon attacks, so we're kind of pineapple penning the two together, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to that creature. Once you deal this damage, you can't use the feature again until the start of your next turn. And let me go over to... these are located in your... this is a Divine Domain feature, not on the Cleric itself. So if we go to Life Domain, we end up getting Divine Strike. And so this is once on each of your turns. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can cause the attack to deal an extra d8 radiant damage. And then it goes up to 2d8. So this is static weapon attacks are getting infused. This is going for... is this? I wonder if this is even better, because Divine Strike is once on each of your turns when you hit a creature, you can cause the attack to deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage to the target, and it goes up to 2d8 at 14. This is in battle, so if it takes damage from one of your spells, you can also deal 1d8. Once you deal this damage, you can't use this feature again until the start of your next turn. So this seems to almost, I guess, diminish the damage output from Divine Strike or from Potent Spellcasting. This one, by the way, here, I'll go to Light Domain. Those are casty clerics. You add your Wisdom modifier to damage you deal with a cleric cantrip. So this is just... Oh, it says to the start of your next turn. Okay, so that's... You can only get it, I guess, if you're multi-attacking for some reason, or something along those lines.
The way I read it is it's the same thing. It's just that now the language has changed from the player's handbook, which is probably 2014, to this, which is 2019. Same thing, different wording. The big trade-off I find, it all comes down to, so say, for example, I've got, let me see, let's look at Tempest Clerics, for example. They have Divine Strike, which are, what did you call them, bonky clerics? Man,
Yes.
I'm going to call them that from now on. That's great. What do you bring to the table, man? I'm a bonky cleric. That's fantastic. Whisper that into your significant other's ears at night. But anyways, Divine Strike, once into your turns when you hit a creature with weapon attack, 1d8 thunder damage to the target. Great. Here's the thing, that last sentence, when you reach 14th level, the extra damage increases to 2d8. Blessed Strikes does not have this clause. So you are trading off, again, your versatility where I can enhance my spells or my weapon attacks at the cost of it doesn't get better. You're stuck.
Yes, more flexibility.
So this one, yeah.
There's one other thing that you mentioned, though. And I don't know if you caught it when you were saying it, or if you're just teasing me to lead into it.
Go on.
With the Tempest Cleric, what kind of damage do you deal with your Divine Strike?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I was leading into that.
Ah.
For example, a Tempest Cleric will deal thunder. Another example is a Trickery Cleric will deal poison. Or a War Cleric would deal just more damage according to the weapon that they are using. With Blessed Strikes, you are locked into radiant damage. Now, radiant damage is pretty sweet by itself.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of creatures out there that are going to be weak to radiant. However, again, it's the trade-off, right? So I think this actually kind of comes back into what Macabre Derek was saying earlier, in that you were trading your specific strengths for something that's a little bit more generic. You know, does that make sense?
Yep.
There's that argument again.
Flexibility.
Yep. Flexibility versus the specific strengths.
Okay. Well, that fleshes out Cleric. We're gonna go to Druid, and now we've been going for well, at least I've been live for a little bit over an hour. What do you say that we go through Druid, and why don't we get up and take maybe a 5-minute break and come back? Would that be good for you?
That's perfectly fine.
Awesome. All right, so for all of you playing along at home, let's go to the Druid in your player's handbook on page 64 and find out what variants are being proposed as in this playtest material. First level, Druid, even above this, cantrip versatility. So we saw cantrip versatility up above. Same concept, doesn't ruffle my feathers. It didn't before. If it does now, that'd be really weird. Super Jamoose, I presume it's the same for you. Cantrip versatility, good.
Same thing as Clerics, all good here.
All right. Druid spells. Level 1 Druid feature, this enhances spell casting. We're going to get an expanded list. So we have Acid Splash, Ceremony, which, Druids, of course, are ceremonial. Like that was part of the mystique, right? Gathering in their circle of stones and whatnot. But anyway, so to see Ceremony on the Druid list, again, a spell's a spell. I'm not offended by it. And, it provides maybe a little bit more flavor or things that people just were, wizards, I do this anyway. Just, throw it on there.
True. Look at all these delicious elemental spells. We have Continual Flame, we have Wall of Sand, we have Thunderstep, Cone of Cold, Flesh to Stone, Incendiary Cloud. Very, very tasty. Yeah, I've always had a great affinity for just elemental spellcasters. So if you don't want to play an evocation wizard, look into the Circles of the Land for a druid, and look at all these nice, tasty flavors you have now. This is just, you're going to love your nuts. This is great stuff.
Yeah. It makes druids more druidy? Oh, no. No, not that. I like it, and I'm glad that you pointed out that a lot of the additives, I mean, yeah, sure, there's Aura of Vitality. It's healing. Okay, but
Sure.
druids could already heal. I do love the elemental expression.
Leroy Highhill saying you could almost try an avatar type thing. We also have a monk for that, so perhaps you could do, and wisdom works out on both sides. That's interesting. You could do Way of the Four Elements mixed in with a Circle of the Land. You could have a super casty kind of avatar, a little bit of martial ability. Mix your drinks there. I like that. That's cool.
Crumb Drade says I'm spiritual, not ceremonial. All right. Next up, we have the Wild Companion.
We have the Wild one.
This enhances, not replaces, this enhances Wild Shape. Now, I mean, for all of you out there who've played a Druid, Wild Shape takes a lot. There's a lot of words. And I don't say that. I don't want to scare anyone away from playing Druid.
There's a lot of words in there.
There's a lot of words because when you turn into an animal, that changes a lot of things. You might have a lot of questions. Can a tiger hold a sword? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Not easily.
Not easily. That is true.
Yeah.
Now, if you're playing the new Pokemon, wolves can have shields and swords. So whatever.
And listen,
it's a fantasy
Dark
world.
Dark Souls invented the sword-wielding wolf, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago? So this is not new. There's nothing new under the sun.
So this enhances Wild Shape. You gain the ability to summon a spirit that assumes an animal form. As an action, you can expend a use of your Wild Shape feature to cast the Find Familiar spell without material components. When you cast the spell in this way, the familiar is a fae instead of a beast, and the familiar disappears after a number of hours equal to half of your druid level. Thoughts?
Palladian corrects me and points out to say, actually, Okami had the whole sword-wielding wolf thing. Yeah. Sure, great. You're absolutely right. Wild Companion. Yeah, this is taking your wild shape, and instead of applying it to yourself, you're creating a friend for that same duration. This is great. Yeah, this is a good idea in that maybe I don't want to be a druid that can shapeshift. Maybe I want to focus on having animal companions. And I know from my players as well, they would relish the ability to summon a weasel or to summon like an insect, and now you have like a little drone or a scout or a UAV that can check things out. That's cool. I like that. Rather than putting themselves in danger if they so wish.
And remember, you can't cast spells in beast form until you are level 18. So if you pop a familiar out, you can still maintain your druid self to fight or cast, and your familiar not only can be a UAV, but remember, familiars can deliver spell attacks as well.
That's right.
So I don't know. I see it as helpful. If you're going to be I don't know, if you're going to be a Circle of the Moon, you might not use this as often, maybe, because you want to be an animal. It doesn't take anything away from being a Circle of the Moon druid. That being said, does this make Circle of the Land then, too powerful in comparison? Well, I mean, Circle of the Land druids were probably shape-shifting to get out of some place, or, as a survival mechanism to try and buff up some hit points before something bad happened. So in its own sense, it was kind of like just a little buff spell. I don't think giving them a familiar, especially because druids and wizards are very close. Well, land druids. Again, if we're getting into Circle of Spores and Circle of Dreams and whatnot, I don't know if having a familiar that delivers more specialty touch attacks or touch spells or whatever, super breaks any of the other subclasses. But I don't know. It's giving you it could be a downtime use. It could be just as you said, you get a friend. Maybe it's a spirit that you want to develop a relationship with and you talk to in downtime, or if you feel uncomfortable in the city, you park outside of it and you send your familiar a little ways to do some scouting or looking or whatever. I like it. I would probably say turning into an animal yourself in many cases is more I don't know, you probably get more mechanics out of it because of the hit points, because of being able to fly or swim or breathe underwater or whatever. So, I don't know, this doesn't offend me.
Definitely not. Shadamura saying, oh yeah, it's actually Twilight is what that quote is. Circle the Twilight for that sweet, sweet. That's what that is. Now, I think you've touched upon two things, and there's another comment in chat I want to come back to here. I think that between adding more elemental spells and this option to project into a find familiar in some other way, I think this is giving Circle of Land a little bit of love. I think that I wouldn't call Circle of the Land unremarkable in the face of Moon, but this might speak to feedback, and that I think probably the majority of druids in the core would go towards Moon, because let's be honest, shape-shifting into an animal and just tearing into things versus being an elemental wizard, you know, which one's going to sound cooler? Which one's going to be more likely they're going to pick? So perhaps giving them more options, maybe this is something they needed to do.
Well, and it enhances their spell options too, because they can deliver their spells with their familiar. So I think it is a little bit of it's a little bit of a buff to Circle of the Land. Circle of the Moon doesn't lose anything. It gains more. You know, Moon still is a full caster. You know, they're not necessarily losing out on that. They're just not as prolific a caster as Circle of the Land is. But it is. I think it's giving more love to Circle of the Land, because you're correct. I want to play a druid, and why do people play druids instead of wizards? I want to turn into mammonals all the time. I want to, I want to be the burr. I want to be a bird that flips around. And you could do a little bit of that as a spellcaster, but if you can't really cast spells, I mean, there's natural recovery, so you can regain your magical energy. But if you lose your spellcasting ability until your epic level, and many games statistically, 1 to 10 is kind of the major sweet spot for a lot of people's adventures, whether they're published or even at home. It could be rare to find people who go up into epic levels. They've been in a campaign for, years, a year or several years. So until you actually hit that level 18 and you can cast while in your beast form, you might feel that you're losing out, and then that could bleed over into, statistically your DPR, as to why you should take Moon then, because you can maximize wild. You can maximize your wild shape, and you still have all the spells you could ever hope to have.
Definitely. One last point I wanted to find here. Someone mentioning to say you can tag team with your familiar, pack advantage with a familiar. Well, not quite. Find Familiar has a very specific list of creatures that you can bring out. Bat, cat, crab, frog, toad, hawk, lizard, octopus, owl, poisonous snake, fish, rat, raven, seahorse, spider, or weasel. Now, I'm going off of memory here, but I don't think any of those have pack tactics. But, that being said, you could potentially send your familiar into the thick of battle to buddy up with your rogue, who can now gain sneak attack because they have a friend in an adjacent square. So that could work.
With an 8 action, or simply by just being friendly and manifest, you mean?
Yes. Yeah, you could do that as well. So, pack tactics, not so much, but there could be other ways to gain a similar or identical effect.
All right. I love it. A lot of good questions and comments in chat. Jamoose, you are laying out some good wisdom here in our back and forth, and I am super happy to be going through this content with you. Why don't we all get up and take maybe like a 5-minute break, a little bit more if you got to finish up some chips and nacho cheese or something like that. And when we do return, we'll begin with the fighter. And there's
we got some things to cover here. Oh,
yeah, boy. we're getting into some martial stuff now. So everyone, let's get up, relieve yourselves as necessary, and we'll come back and start into the fighter.